So when you're working with a person, and you want to douse about a person, it's important to clear the decks, so to speak. So ideally you work on a table with nothing on it. And then you have, or a screen, if you use a screen, so you've got a picture of the person and their name on your computer screen, then you have nothing else open. So although you've got files with things in them, they're not open. So you've got everything closed down so that your screen picture is only the screen picture of the person's picture and name, perhaps. Or you have it on a printed bit of paper on your desk and there's no other paper there. Because you don't, in the beginning, you want to be sure you're focusing on the person and nothing else. Later, as you get more robust in it, you can do it anytime. I make jokes that you can do it like that. That could be yes and that could be no. Or that could, my nose twitching could be yes and no. My eyelids could be yes and no. And you can use anything in the end. But in the beginning, you want a clean sheet of paper and you're going to get a tentative yes and a tentative no. And until you get stronger signals. And this signal will build with time. And the more you encourage it, the better it will get. And you can go through, so what I do then on if I'm working with a person, I'm using the TIPPS system. First of all, I'm asking the simple question, are the source resonances suitable for them? If I get that, a yes, okay. Can I help this person with source resonances? That's a good question. If you get a no, I did the other day, and I found out it was because they were doing transcendental meditation, and transcendental meditation just stopped the resonances. I don't know why that is, but it's obviously a powerful technique, and it's a different technique. So sometimes, you just have to dig around, because fundamentally the resonances should work with just about everybody, but there can be blockages. So what I always do, we always recommend you start with the person. You don't know anything about them, and you douse them. So, or you do the O-ring, and you decide which TIPPS issues are important. So you go through the toxins, infections, psychological trauma, physical trauma, and you see. So you do. Are the toxins important? No. Are the infections important? Yes. Are the psychological traumas important? No. And for example, that happens in a person who's done a lot of psychotherapeutic work and constellation work. Often people have done a huge amount of work on themselves in a psychotherapeutic sort of way or spiritual way. So they have touched and dealt with enough, they created enough fluidity in their psychological traumas for that not to be an issue. And then you go to the physical toxins and you find, oh yes, that's it. So then you dig down. Then what I do is I dig down into the physical toxins or the infectious diseases and or whatever I've registered. And so to look for which ones are the important ones for this person. So I have a list, if you like, of the infectious diseases of the West, the influenzas, and just remember, it can be the diseases which have almost died out, like smallpox, or supposed to have died out, the Black Death or the Black Plague, which hasn't died out. These things can leave aftermaths for at least 100 years. So malaria has died out, but many people have had it, or their parents have had it. So you're looking for the infectious diseases in this person's family history or in their actual life. And then when you've got this information, what you then do is correlate it with the information you've got from a questionnaire or something from them, and you see if there's a match, because what you're looking for is intuition guided by reason and facts. So that's how we do it. We always like to, if it's purely intuitive, that's great. And if it's strong, it's great. But if it's purely facts, that's not reliable at all. You need the intuition and you need the facts. If you get the facts that justify it, then that's great. And if you then say you think it's a birth trauma and you've decided it's a birth trauma, and the facts say that something happened around the birth, and then you get them in front of you and talk to them, and you inquire deeper, and you say, well, could you just ring up your mum and get them to ring their mum on the spot and ask the mum about what happened at the birth. And suddenly you find, oh yes, and she tells them some things she never thought was important, but since you're asking, she tells them. And then you find out that there was a terrible mess at the birth, and then you know you've hit gold and you're on the right track. So intuition supported by reason and facts, that's really good way of working. Another reason to use the O-ring technique is to decide on the prescription. Let's say you're going to give them a resonance for abandonment at birth. Abandonment because they were, or isolation because they were put in an incubator and the mother couldn't see them every day because she had 4 kids at home and the parent and was a single parent, or father was away working or in prison or whatever. So she couldn't get to see you every day. So you were there in an incubator. It was a noisy surrounding and she couldn't touch you every day. She was not there for you. That's a hugely damaging experience. So now you want to know is what to do, how to prescribe this. So ideally you give it once, we always recommend sticking to hard reality, give 1 dose once, unless you know they're a hypersensitive person, in which case you back off and do high sensitivity stuff. But otherwise you give 1 dose once and wait for a week and then watch. And if nothing seems to happen, then you can start daily. Or you can dowse, and later on as you get more skilled, you dowse. Well, is it once a day or once a week, or is it five times a day on repeat, or is it 5 times spaced out, or is it what is it, Or another favorite of mine is we put it on repeat but stop as soon as you notice anything. And some people, because they're fairly attuned, notice that their body suddenly something really starts happening, and so you must stop and wait for it to run. So so using the O-ring technique for deciding on the prescriptions is for certain the most reliable method, because any other method seems to me is just guesswork. And guidelines just don't apply because everybody's different. So the last thing you might want to use the O-ring technique for is if you get an aggravation. So the person listens to a resonance and then they get a worsening of symptoms, which is usually a good sign, but you don't want it to be too bad. And we have a list of signs of cure, which are in other videos and on the website. And you really do need to know the signs of cure quite profoundly so that you know what's going on. So an aggravation means that the person is toxic in some way. There's too much stuff there. Or they're very sensitive. So you've eliminated the sensitivities. So then if there's an aggravation, you need to look around for the toxicities. And again, you could use the O-ring to try and figure out what those were. You've overlooked something, or they haven't told you something, or something you don't know. And anyway, the O-ring technique can be used for that as well. Okay, I think I've said everything I want to say. That's my introduction to how to use the O-ring. And I mean, I'm not an expert in teaching the O-ring, and I'm really happy if you send me your questions, because I'd like to become a bit more of an expert in teaching the O-ring technique. And I'm just giving you my experiences. And as I said, I suggest you find people locally who are intuitive and do use these sort of tools and get to use them, get to work with them. So, because it's like riding a bicycle, the more you see of it, the easier it is. Okay, thanks for listening. And the website is sourcemedicine.zone.